And yes, I've come back after a break. And I appreciate all the nice messages that people have sent me about wanting me to make more videos. I want to make more videos too, but all I can say is that I will make content as long as I can create time to do it. Just be aware, there are lots of ideas I want to cover in this channel, so I'm hoping to make a lot more content in the future. So in this case, why did I come back? Well, that's because I was so excited to share news about these Caswell boots. This is the Lisbon 2 boot, which is made in olive chrome XL. Now, just looking at it, it probably just looks like a dark brown to most people, but there's a hint of green. So I'm excited to share the many good things about this boot, and I will also share any concerns that I may have for some people. Now, what was it that attracted me to this brand? Well, a lot of it was the fact that Caswell was creating a lot of plain toe boots, which is what I prefer. But also, the leather choices were very interesting and very appealing to me. They've had a number of boots in which I've been interested in, but this olive chrome XL was the first one that pushed me over into buying them. So, what do I think about them? Well, there's a lot to say, and some of the conclusions surprise me. In terms of fit, the Wayne Last is true to size, at least for me. However, it is designed for a person with a normal or low volume instep. This is not like, say, the Alden Modified Last, where it's intentionally designed for people with high insteps. You will notice that when I lace up, I do have a fairly wide lacing gap. But even so, it does not feel like the boots are constricting me in any way. I will add that this boot does have a little bit more room than the Allen Edmonds 1757 at the ankles area, and it's slightly better at the instep, although not much. It's pretty similar to the 1757 in terms of the instep fit. When I first held these boots in my hands, I thought they might be too narrow, but this is because it's a deceptive looking last. The ball area may look narrow in this boot, which is the intention, but it's actually quite roomy. There's quite a bit of volume in it. It's just because the combination of the shape, this last was designed to be a little bit sleeker, and the sole also makes it look a little bit more narrow than, say, something like the Higgins Mill or the Grant Stone boots that I own. The shape is really nice. I actually prefer it to my Higgins Mill. I think it looks better than most of the boots in my collection, to be honest. The Wayne Last is also not as bulbous as the Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill, or even my Alden shoes on the Modified Last. It doesn't have quite as much of a round look to it. It's got more of an almond shape, kind of like the Grant Stone Leo Last, except a little more sleek. There's definitely a little more width in the Leo Last at the ball area. The heel to ball lines up perfectly as it should, so I think this really will be a true to size boot for most people. But again, you have to consider, do you have a high instep? The length of the Wayne Last is pretty similar to the Allen Edmonds 1757, so it's not a long last. Overall, I much prefer this last to the Grant Stone Leo Last, although I would say that the Leo Last is better at the instep, is much better. There's a lot more room at the instep, but aside from that, I just feel more natural in this Wayne Last than I do the Leo. The Wayne Last is quite efficient with the space. It's not really wasting very much, but at the same time, for me, there's no pressure points or pain or anywhere in the boot. I am an 8D in most of my boots and shoes, and with the Lisbon, I'm also an 8D, so at least for me, it runs true to size. And just for comparison, I'm a 7.5D in the Grant Stone Leo Last and everything. And unfortunately, being a new company, they do not have triple E widths yet, so the widths are quite limited. The finishing and quality control is excellent. It's on par with the pairs of Alden boots that I've received, as well as Cheney, so it's as good as any brand I've had so far. The lining reminds me more of British brands like Crockett & Jones or Cheney, and the overall feel of this boot is a little more European than some of the other boots. The olive chrome XL, to my eyes, looks very similar to the golden brown chrome XL that used to exist from Allen Edmonds many years ago. It's like they took that golden brown chrome XL and just added just a hint of green to it. In direct sunlight, you're definitely going to see it, whereas in overcast type of lighting, you might not notice it as much. You can see here there's this nice beige triple stitching going on throughout the boot. And you also have this Z design here, which gives the boots a little bit of originality to stand out. Again, I like that these are plain toe because that means they're not going to stand out too much as it is. But having these nice little stitching details, it gives the boots something to stand out a little bit without being too loud. And then there's this nice heel cup design at the back of the boots where the stitching also is. But overall, these are still just a plain toe boot with some nice details on them that are a little unusual. Chrome Excel, of course, is going to get very easily blemished and it's going to crease in some obvious ways, but it will also absorb those things, and it is a very resilient leather. All the scars that you get, they somehow just become part of the boot, and the leather is very resilient. Because it is Chrome Excel, I do expect the color to change, but I have no idea if it's going to get darker or lighter because I just don't know. My Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill boots in brown Chrome Excel, they had quite a lot more red in them when I first got them, but 6 years later, they're much lighter than they used to be. So we'll see what happens with this pair. The heel counter is not leather, it's made up of something different. It might be fiberboard or leatherboard, but most everything else is leather. So in terms of raw materials, you're getting something very good or comparable to at least the British brands or Alden. One of the things I also appreciate about these is the weight. These weigh approximately 1.54 pounds. In comparison, that is almost identical to the weight of my Higgins Mill boots, also 1.54. The Grant Stone Force Kudu boots are slightly heavier, although I was very surprised to find out that they were only very slightly heavier than the other boots I own, but for some reason they feel a lot more heavy. And just for comparison, you can see what my other boots weigh. Perhaps what surprised me most was that there was almost no break-in with this pair. My experience with most boots is that there is some sort of break-in. But with this pair, it was like trying to break in my pair of Alden Chrome Excel boots. There was no break-in in both the Alden and the Caswell boots. The insole in the ball area feels similar to Grant Stone or Cheney. However, the outsole and the midsole combination, for some reason, is a lot more forgiving on my feet. It's also a lot more flexible than what you would get with the Grant Stone studded sole boot. Since this is a Ridgeway sole, it is a day-night sole, but it's like an upgraded version of the day-night. I find it more comfortable than the standard day-night, and there's nothing wrong with the regular day-night. I'm just saying that I think this one has better traction, and it's also more forgiving on the feet. It was also nice to see that Caswell includes a sock liner at the heel. I always appreciate this in boots. It just makes a difference when you're walking on harder surfaces. I know that some brands do not always include this, so I was happy to see this with this brand. And underneath the padding and the insole is a steel shank, which is one of the best options, of course, that you can get for support. The other thing I'd like to highlight, though, is the amount of material you get when ordering. Being a new brand, I honestly didn't expect Caswell to give the customer so many extras. I expected that they would at least cut corners on some of these things, but I was wrong. You get this nice box, they give you 2 sets of extra boot laces, they give you these wonderfully designed shoe bags, which are the best of any in my collection, at least in terms of how they look. They also give you this thank you card signed by Kevin, the founder. So you're really getting a ton of value just like you would with Grant Stone. And all of this I really did not expect, especially from a new brand. Now, I've said so many good things about this boot. What are the things to be aware of that might be a problem? Well, one small thing I didn't like about these boots was the laces that it came with originally. These laces are fine, it's just that they're pretty thin and just the same kind of brown that you would get with like Grant Stone or Alden. This is not a big deal because I usually will swap out laces in just about every pair of boots that I own. This color of olive Chrome Excel will work with a lot of different colors of laces, like dark brown, beige, or green olive laces. Another thing to be aware of is that if you're looking for something that's more like a real work boot, this is not it. These are much more in line with Alden or Allen Edmonds. One other thing to be aware of is that this boot does not have any speed hooks. It uses 7 lacing holes. All of my boots have speed hooks, and this is the only one that does not. But some of the newer models from Caswell do have speed hooks, so it appears they may be going in that direction. It's not a big deal, but if you prefer speed hooks, then maybe that's something to consider. The other thing to be aware of is the price. These were $359 when I got them, and I know that they're going to be more than that if they do offer them again. But I think even if you're paying over $400 for this, I think you're getting basically a $600 boot for the price of about $400 or $450. These boots are made in Spain, which there's a long story behind this brand about how they wanted to make them in the United States. And they are going to have a United States line from what I hear. But as of now, most of their boots are made in Spain. But I will say these are as good as any other brand that I own that's made in the US. And in comparison to other brands where you're paying, $500 or $600 for a pair of Alden boots or whatever brand you want, I think they're a really good bargain for the amount of quality that you get. Overall, I would say I like these a little bit more than my Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill boots. I think the last is a little bit better for me, and just the overall design I think is a little more interesting, although I'm still a huge fan of my original Higgins Mill boots. But what also surprised me is that the comfort of these was on the same level as my Higgins Mill boots, which is rare. Even though it doesn't have a full sock liner like the Higgins Mill, it's still as comfortable, at least for me. Now, I wouldn't say they're my favorite boots. That spot still goes to my Alden boots on the modified last. And there's also some small details in the boots that I prefer in the Alden, but these are not far behind, and I consider these as good as my Higgins Mill boots, if not better. I think they are better than my Higgins Mill boots in terms of quality and finishing, and the comfort level's definitely on par with them. So, how would I rate these boots? So, overall, I would give these boots a 9 out of 10. They are really, really good boots. Overall, with this boot, it exceeded my expectations. The bottom line here is that I am very picky about which boots I buy, and especially which ones I keep, because I have a limited number. I don't have an infinite number of boots. Most of my footwear is shoes. But these are an outstanding value of quality for the price. What Kevin is doing with this brand, I can only hope that it succeeds in time, because it really aligns well with the kind of style that I like in boots, and the price point is also very accessible. However, I know that the prices on Caswell boots are going to be increasing in the future. I know that they're planning a made in USA line at some point, but also the ones that are made in Spain, they're excellent quality, but I know that they were not highly profitable with their early releases, so I would expect their prices are going to go up a bit. Well, I hope you got something useful out of this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will check out Caswell boots if their styles appeal to you.